scientists need to keep an open mind.
We physicists are conservative revolutionaries in the sense that we have to be open to all sorts of crazy, bizarre phenomena. Who would have thought that there's something called radioactivity? Who would have thought that we would have quantum forces? So we have to be open to these things. The most successful physical theory of all time is called quantum mechanics, the theory of the atom, because it's based on the idea of probabilities, that you don't really know where an electron is, and electrons can exist in some sense in multiple states at the same time.
The fuzzy nature of subatomic particles might just provide a way to explain the sixth sense. Erwin Schrödinger, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, designed a thought experiment to drive home the strange rules of his theory. Let's say we put a cat and a vial of poison in a box. We add an atom of radioactive uranium and a Geiger counter. If the uranium decays, it sets off the Geiger counter, which then releases the poison and silently kills the cat. Before we open the box and look, we can't actually know whether the uranium has decayed or not, since radioactive decay is a probabilistic quantum event.
Here's the question. Is the cat dead or alive? Well, according to quantum mechanics, the cat is neither dead nor alive, but the sum of the two states. Well, at that point, you say, well, that's nonsense. That's preposterous. How can you be both dead and alive simultaneously?
Schrödinger's cat was supposed to show that nothing in this universe is certain until someone makes a measurement. But another pioneer of quantum mechanics, Eugene Wigner, believed it could teach us something else about the working of the universe, that consciousness controls everything.
Wigner said, let's take it one step farther. If I, a human being, looks at the cat, I am conscious. Therefore, consciousness determines existence. At that point, Einstein went ballistic and said, what? You're saying that the fact that you are a conscious being determines the fact that the cat is alive? Answer is yes. And Wigner made one more step, and that is, how do I know I'm alive? You see, the cat and me, we're part of the same universe. If I don't know the cat is alive or dead, I could also be dead at the same time and not even know it. So who determines that I'm alive? Well, Wigner's friend looks at me, I look at the cat, and we exist. But then who looks at Wigner's friend? And there's an infinite chain of people looking at people, until finally you hit cosmic consciousness. Some consciousness that's ethereal, that envelops the universe, which looks at us and says, aha, the cat is alive.
Wigner believed that consciousness is an inextricable part of reality, that nothing really happens in the physical world unless a conscious mind observes it.
What are your thoughts on questions of spirituality and religious questions and religious explanations for these kind of things? Yeah.
As I said before, there's a quantum transition between nothing to these small bubbles.
Rather.
These bubbles start to expand.
Yeah, there's a big quantum leap from nothing to something.
Something, right.
Yeah.
Is that in order to make sure that you know the state of an object, like whether or not an atom has decayed or not, or whether I'm even sitting here at the table, you have to make a measurement.
Yeah.
And before you make a measurement, you don't really know whether the person is really there or not.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
Principle.
Right.
Heisenberg. No.
Right. Now the question is, if you have to observe something, this means, of course, that somebody has to do the observing.
Yes, right.
Consciousness has to open the box. Now the question is, therefore, was there consciousness before humans?
Yeah. Oh, well, okay.
Now, Einstein asked this question. He said, this is ridiculous. He didn't believe in the quantum theory. We now know this is, of course, Einstein's great mistake. Now, Einstein was very puzzled about this. Now, of course, the average person hearing this for the first time thinks that scientists have finally gone wacko, that this, of course, is the end of physics. Scientists have finally gotten off the deep. They're mad. But actually, this has been tested experimentally. We have atoms like cats that are neither dead nor alive. And before you look at the atom, you cannot tell whether they're dead or alive, whether they have decayed or whether they're still there or not.
Yeah.
Okay? So in fact, the act of observing means the thing springs into existence. Okay? Now this, of course, means that physicists have to confront the question of consciousness. And that is rather uncomfortable. We physicists don't like to talk about consciousness, especially consciousness other than human consciousness.
Yeah.
In other words, does the universe exist just because we look at it? However, the quantum theory, and this is what bothered Einstein, brings us back to the question of who observes. Can you observe without humans? If so, does that mean that necessarily you have God, which some physicists say? Eugene Wigner, winner of the Nobel Prize, said that this essentially proves the existence of God.
Matter originates in accordance with laws of nature, quantum laws, which must have existed before there was any matter, because the matter comes into existence in accordance with the quantum laws. So it cannot be true that they think the laws just describe how matter acts. On the contrary, the laws tell matter how it's going to act, and the laws actually create matter. Now, some of my colleagues like to talk very misleadingly about these days we believe in the bootstrap theory of the universe. And the bootstrap theory is the universe pulls itself into being by its own bootstraps. In other words, out of nothing. You get creation out of nothing. But it's not nothing. You've got the laws of quantum physics, and they're not matter either, and they exist in order to produce the universe. So modern physics has got itself into a state where it cannot be materialistic. That's the irony of materialism, that materialists think they're being scientific, but quantum physicists say, well, actually, matter is a very mysterious sort of stuff, and it originates from something beyond the material.
Matter is really an appearance of mind. So if you say, where is the electron when we're not looking at it? Do you remember Bishop Berkeley, who said, where is everything when we're not looking at it? Berkeley had the view that to be is to be perceived. Anything which is only exists if it's being perceived. Now, electrons are like that. They only exist if you're looking at them. Or more technically, if you're making an experimental interference which collapses the probability wave into a particle. Right? But then you've got to look at it to see that. So if you're not looking, electrons don't exist. Only probability waves exist. Well, now, what this is coming up with is the view, accepted by many, but not all quantum physicists, the view that actually subatomic particles only exist when they're being looked at. Otherwise, they don't exist at all. Does anything exist? John Wheeler, Nobel Prize-winning physicist, says, no elementary phenomenon is real unless it is observed. We know about all these particles, electrons, protons, neutrons, gravitons, hundreds of them, and Wheeler says none of them exist unless it's being observed. And people who talk about matter being the thing out of which minds somehow evolve are as wrong as they could possibly be, because matter is only in the mind. And if there weren't any minds, there wouldn't be any matter. Eugene Wigner, another Nobel Prize-winning physicist, says, study of the external world, he means in quantum physics, often called the new physics. Eugene Wigner says, study of the external world leads to the conclusion that contents of consciousness are the ultimate reality. If you ask what is ultimately real, the answer is that which is a content of some consciousness. Now remember Bishop Berkeley again. Bishop Berkeley said, yes, things are real only when they're being observed. And you ask the question, well, what if nobody's looking? And Berkeley said, well, I'm a bishop and I can tell you that God is always looking. Things are what they are because they're being observed by God. And if there wasn't a God, there wouldn't be anything. Von Neumann says, all real things are contents of consciousness. Now, what do you make of that? Well, one thing you could say, and people like Eugene Wigner do say, well, this shows that the whole of reality is a construct of mind. It's constructed by mind. And what mind could it be than the mind of God? So the mind of God becomes integral to science. It's not that you say, could we have an argument from physics to God? It's that physics is about God. There is a super intelligent cosmic mind.
And there are quantum physicists like John Wheeler, very famous quantum physicist, who says actually the Big Bang didn't exist until somebody thought of it. Right? The Big Bang wouldn't exist unless somebody thought of it, and that somebody, guess what, was God.